What's up, y'all? Aaron from the ONESREADY team. Before we jump into this awesome podcast with Tyler Mace from Guardian Fitness, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you can prepare yourself to get into the pipeline. That's what we're talking about with Tyler. That's what his whole project is about. So head on over to Ataclete to get all of your training needs and gear. Everything from replacement straps to tactical watches to full-on packs of things that are made to help provide you the skills and the equipment that you need to get through the pipeline. So head on over to Ataclete.com. That's ATACLETE.com. Use the code ONESREADY at checkout to get yourself the training gear that you need to be successful in this aspect war world. And oh, by the way, if you need a little boost, a little energy, a little pre-workout, head on over to CardoMax.com using the same code ONESREADY. Check out their energy intensifier, which Trent loves. He's probably drinking 5 packets of it right now because that's how that dude gets down. His caffeine tolerance is through the roof. But honestly, you only need one of them. They come in small packs that you can throw in a pack, throw in a ruck, throw in your pocket, and then mix them in with your favorite water or whatever other sports drink, to be honest with you. I personally love the blue raspberry flavor. It's fire. It's great. Use those to keep you going. They also have hydration packs. They're hydro support. So check them out, CardoMax.com. Use the code ONESREADY at checkout. Now on to this awesome podcast with Tyler Mace and Guardian Fitness. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to the ONESREADY team room. It's just me, your boy, Aaron, sitting down with a good friend, Pararescueman, and now owner, operator, coach, mentor, guide of Guardian Fitness. We're going to talk all things, but Tyler, thanks for sitting down with us. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, man. Thank you, Aaron, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. So, man, we crossed paths. We were together at the schoolhouse before, and obviously, the career fields are super small. So we'd cross paths and we knew each other before. And, so I know a lot of your backstory, but for everybody out there that's kind of wondering, who is Tyler Mace? Can you tell us how it is that you found your way into pararescue?
Yeah, man. Actually, in high school, I had a really close family friend. He got blown up in Iraq, survived, but he had a lot of issues. So naturally, man, I was angry. I just wanted to fight. My dad, being Army for 22 years, he's like, the Army's not for you, dude. You like to think on your own. Don't go Army. I brought home a Marine recruiter. Dude, he kicked him out of the house. So he kind of like drugged me by the neck to the Air Force recruiter. And I walk in there and I'm like, hey, look, I don't want to turn wrenches and I don't want to sit at a desk. What do you have for me? So she said, turn around, right? It's not science fiction posters that they have up.
That guy's name is Ben. We went through the pipeline together. So when he became the poster child, because he's a square jawed, good looking dude. He was in his kit. Yeah, absolutely.
They're pretty compelling pictures, right? So I looked at them and I'm like, hey, which one's harder? They're like, well, pararescue is the hardest entry standard. So I went for that. Did my pass test, got picked up. And she was like, okay, it's going to be about 2 years for your next contract. Cool. I have 2 years to train, whatever.
Sure.
This was in August of 2012, right? I get a call in September and she's like, hey, guy before you got a DUI, you have a contract in January. So actually, I knew nothing about pararescue.
No.
I had 3 months to train. So,
wow.
What did as I could.
What did you use to train? So obviously you had the internet and there were some people that were floating around it. So, you start digging into the career field and try to learn, I assume, as much as you possibly can. Was there anything that you used prior to getting in?
Honestly, it was just the special warfare recruiter liaison, his little training guide that he gave you. That was it. It was a 2-week program specifically tailored to the pass test. And I think I got my swim down to 8 minutes, my run 9:15. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. And then you show up to, at that point it was Medina you show up to basic training first and, basic training, it wasn't probably the hardest thing that you've ever had to do, but you probably started making those connections and figuring out, you start looking around, you're like, hey, who else is going to go, try these things? Were you doing any of the late night dorm workouts in BMT?
Yeah, we were trying. We actually got in a lot of trouble for them because they didn't want us to do that at all. The only thing that we were allowed to do was ins and outs essentially for the chow hall. So while you were waiting for the chow hall, you could do pull-ups, push-ups, and sit-ups, and that was it.
Oh, wow. And to see how far that has come, I'm obviously an old, irrelevant dude at this point, but looking back on what I did and then, hearing what you did, and now they have entire flights of aspect war candidates, and you're not only encouraged, but expected to do extra PT and have extra mentorship sessions. So it's been really good to see that evolution from where it was to where it is now. So you show up over to the Medina Annex and that first day of INDOC. Did you feel prepared? Were you ready to go?
No. I was not prepared.
Fantastic. No, absolutely not.
Honestly, man, I think not having the information that all these other guys had, I think it worked in my favor.
Right.
I think a lot of these people, they just got in their own head, and they would
Mhm.
show up in the morning in their blues and quit before the next day.
You don't even know how that day is going to go, my guy. Like, at least go to an event, you know?
Exactly. And when I was going through the events, I was able to just focus on the event at hand and just think, hey, this isn't that hard. A couple underwaters, full kit, whatever. It's not that hard. And then, you'd go back to your dorm room at night, and that's when it starts creeping in, like, man, what do I have to do tomorrow? So I just watched movies. I focused on Disney movies, go to my happy place.
Just turn your brain off. There's freedom in that, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to say that you were ignorant, but there is, there's a little bit of truth to that where you're not, you don't know everything that's coming down the pipe. You don't have all that information. So you're just seaweed. You just take it as it comes and you're like, all right, event to event, meal to meal. I'm just going to figure this one out and we're going to see if we can't just do this thing. What was the hardest part of INDOC for you?
Ooh, that's a tough question. It was getting set back. So I got set back my first INDOC class.
Oh, wow.
And then I went through what they called at the time the battle program. And it was Sergeant Garcia and Hatzidakis who were running it. And it was brutal. I just thought those two were crazy, right? But I remember going into my second INDOC, like, I'm not going back through battle.
Right.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. And then, so obviously, spoiler alert, since, you are a pararescueman that's out now doing other great things. Spoiler alert, you made it through INDOC. What was it like standing in that room on graduation day? Had you made it? Was that it?
No, that wasn't it. I knew I had a long pipeline ahead of me, but man, I felt so just elated, on top of the world, right? Being able to stand tall in this room full of other graduates, like my team, it was just an amazing feeling. Yeah.
How many folks did you start with? How many did you graduate out of INDOC?
So we started with 160 and we graduated with 32.
You started with 160?
Yeah.
That is a huge, like, just imagining, I went back, we had a like 118 or 120 or something. And even with that number, I was like, this is so many people just to try to get to chow. Like, just to try to get people to breakfast in the morning was this entire military production. It was like 160 is insane.
Yeah, you had to wake up at 4 a.m. just for food.
Gross, just for food. Yeah. It was the worst, absolute worst. So we get you through the pipeline. You're going through schools. Do you get set back anywhere at any of the other specific schools before you got to the apprentice course?
Yeah, I got set back in paramedic. I ended up breaking my foot somewhere between INDOC and Army Airborne.
Oh, wow.
So I went through all of the paramedic course with a broken foot, and then I got to clinicals, and they're like, hey, you can't pick somebody up, so we're setting you back. Like, that's nice.
Thanks, guys. You couldn't have told me 6 months ago that this was a thing.
So then I actually had to start paramedic back over from day one. So that extended my pipeline by a full year.
Oh, wow. How long did it take you to get through all said and done?
All said and done? What do you mean?
All said and done. How long did it take? Yeah, sorry.
Just a month shy of 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. What, how did you stay motivated during that time? Those long pipelines and waiting for the next school and you, obviously, having setbacks as you did, how did you stay motivated to stay focused on task accomplishment?
I think we had pretty good examples just by the instructors, right? The fact that we were waiting in Kirtland, we had direct contact with the instructors weekly, at least. And just seeing them be so motivated to teach us is what motivated me to keep going. Oh,
nice. So there we go. We get to the end of the apprentice course. You're standing on that stage. You get to command, blouse your boots, don your beret. You shout the creed with your boys. What was your first duty assignment?
Tucson, Arizona, the 48th.
Nice. And then, so we always ask, you've made it, right? Like, you put the beret on, you're good. You're like, man, I'm on top of the world. You're the biggest fish in that small pond in Kirtland Air Force Base. And then you show up and you're once again back at the bottom of the totem pole out of the 48th. How was that transition for you?
It was all right. I had somebody prep me before we go. I think it might have actually been you. Pull us aside, be like, hey, you guys, like, you have your berets, just know this isn't it. Like you haven't quote unquote made it. You still need to work hard, right? So that was a good mental preparation. And actually, as an instructor, I tell my students that before they graduate, not after. It's like, hey guys, when you put your beret on, you're going to get to this unit, and now you're considered a liability for your team until you can prove yourself otherwise.
Yeah, when you show up on one of those teams, you were just dangerous, just trained enough that you're dangerous and you can hurt somebody.
Exactly.
Because you're not a student. People aren't like holding on to you. You know, there's very distinct guardrails your entire pipeline. Like, we are not going to let you go so far off to the left or right limits that you're going to hurt yourself. That's what the instruction is. That's why we're so good at producing students and have a very low, all throughout the pipeline, we have a very low incidence of people getting hurt or people, having bad stuff happen. But the second that you get on the team, a lot of that is like, you don't have an instructor over your shoulder all the time. You've got a team sergeant, but that team sergeant expects you to do what you're supposed to do as an individual. Like, you are now a singleton, essentially. That's, I'm not going to be flying with you one-on-one at night. Like, I'm going to expect you to, don't backslide, be a good free fall jumper, be safe, put your, dump your chute at the appropriate time and make sure you land with the team. And, that's a scary thing. That's a tough thing. And I'll say it from both ends. It's a scary thing as a team sergeant. It's a scary thing as a guy that's showing up on team and, knowing that you're just dangerous enough to kill yourself or a teammate. And that's tough. And oh, by the way, you're expected again to almost repeat your entire pipeline, because now you have to show all these skills one level up. The big gripe about the way that we train is that the guys show up to the unit and they're like, I just did this. In your case, I just did this for 3 years, man. Like, I just did all of these skills. I've been evaluated. And they're like, you were evaluated to like this level. Like, the rest of the team is here. Like, we need to see you perform up here now. The tasks may be the same, but the expectation is different. Did you feel pressure in that environment?
Yeah, I felt some pressure showing up and like going up to this guy who I look up to, and he's like, "Hey, I need to evaluate you. Like, you need a mission eval." Like, what the heck is that?
So, what mission?
Exactly. But come to find out that it's not that bad. They only evaluate you to the skill level that you're at, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And as long as you just do what you're trained to do, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So,
how long was it before you got your first deployment out of there?
1 year.
Nice. So 1 year from the time that you graduated to the time that you're downrange. In that year, as that deployment was kind of creeping up on you, what were you trying to get yourself ready for? So you've already dealt with adversity from setbacks. You've already done some really hard things through, NDOC and not knowing exactly what you're getting into, all the way back to the start of your journey. But as that deployment was on the horizon and those calendar dates started getting closer and stuff started getting real, what were you worried about most?
Honestly, I was thinking about my friend, right? The one who got blown up, because our deployment was scheduled to go to the exact same location. So I'm like, hey, we're going into this location. I know people are going to be blown up. I know we're going to be in a situation where we have to save lives and potentially fight, right? So that's what I'm framing my whole mindset on. And at this point, I understood, like, my whole job isn't to kill, but I also understood that if it came down to it, I had to, in order to save somebody else. So I had to come to terms with that.
That's a heavy thing. And it's a heavy thing that you have to guide people through. And, it's a weird thing is we get a lot of DMs and, from people that don't know any better. So I don't judge them for it, I guess. But, they'll DM me and they'll be like, listen, I want to go fight. I want to go get, they'll tell me I want to get into pararescue, but I don't think that it's going to be a good fit for me because there's just not that much combat going on. And we almost always reply, we're like, bro, the only people that say that are people that have never seen combat. Like, once you go and once you kind of touch that stone, the willingness to actively engage in that thing sort of goes down. Like, one of my team leaders always rings in my head. One of my first team sergeants, he was like, the last thing that I want to be in is a firefight. You know why? Because I've actually been in a firefight and it's not cool. People get hurt, people die. If people call us to do our job, it means that there's an American somewhere that's hurt, and that's not good. Like, you never wish that on some stuff. And it's hard to walk that line, because from your experience, I don't know if you would say the same, but it's a tough thing to wrap your head around. Like, hey, yeah, absolutely. If I have to get into a firefight and kill somebody because that's what the mission requires, then I'm going to do it. But I don't wish that on anybody. And oh, by the way, the whole reason we're there is because an American's hurt. Like that's a tough thing to deal with.
Yeah.
So you step out the door, you go right back to, where you already have some negative feelings or negative transfers. What did you learn on that first deployment?
The biggest thing, know your mission, right? So this whole time I was prepping to go do what I trained to do for the last 4 years, right? And that's to be on the ground, save lives, be a PJ. Mm-hmm. But our mission at the time, it was to cover down on the air assets, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand what that truly meant. So there were some situations where, we absolutely could have launched to go on the ground and grab people and pull them back. But we were told that's not our mission, right? And in all honesty, that destroyed me. Just the first deployment, right? So I came home from that struggling with a sense of purpose because I just trained for 4 years under the motto that others may live. I thought that was my whole purpose. And then, you deploy, the opportunity arises and you get told no. Because there is an air asset in the air, right? You have to go get that pilot. You have to go get that ISR. And it makes sense now. But at the time, as a brand new guy, I didn't get it.
Yeah. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating as a team member. It's frustrating as a team sergeant. It's frustrating as an SEL, fighting those battles to be like, listen, this is what we're here for. Let us go do this thing. And to get told, and they'll use flowery terms like, we're going to deprioritize you, or, you're a high demand, low density asset that we can't afford to put out on this other thing. And it's frustrating because, you've said it perfectly. You trained your entire life to go save lives and aid the injured. And watching that happen without, watching a terrible event happen, and you think you can help, to be told no, that's highly frustrating. It's a tough thing to get through. When you got back home, back home off this first deployment, you're a completely different person now. You got out, you got your first pump, you got that first deployment in, cool. Well, now I'm assuming they're putting you in a leadership position where you're starting to train these younger 3 levels that are in there. So how did your mindset shift between, maybe the frustration of those deployments and, the things that you saw when you were deployed? How did that shift your mindset when you were talking to the young 3 levels?
Expectation management was huge, right? I'd pull them aside and be like, hey, this is the job. This is what you train for. But when you deploy, know what you're getting into, know what your mission is. And specifically that, what is this team going into this country for? And realistically, it turned from looking after myself to looking after them. The spotlight's no longer on me, right? It is in a leadership aspect, but now I need to make sure these guys have the proper skills to go into this country and do the job properly. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. When did you start getting salty? Because we all do it. So when was the first time that you remember where you looked at these young guys and be like, what are you, get off your phone. We're going to go train, get away from this computer. We're going out there. So when did the saltiness start to creep in? Cause like any good NCO, I guarantee that you had a little, you felt some type of way about these darn kids.
Yeah. It actually started creeping in on the second deployment. They were complaining about the training tempo, right? So when you're on deployment, historically you get 1 day off, maybe, right?
Maybe Sundays, maybe Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And every other day you are training, right? So Med Monday, Tactical Tuesday, the whole gambit all throughout the week. And when they started complaining about the off tempo on deployment, right? You have to do this kind of introspective look on yourself, like, hey, am I pushing myself too hard? Am I pushing them too hard? Do I need to adjust the schedule? No, these guys aren't where they need to be. Let's push them harder. And then when they're at that level, then you can start tailoring back a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's about the time I started getting salty.
I got it. Well, it's hard to communicate as well. You're from a very specific, spot. You were on your second deployment, probably element leader, team leaders, area where you're out there leading a team and what you could be called to do. And you have the benefit of experience and you have the benefit of getting that knowledge dumped from your mentors and during your training cycle and all this other stuff. And it's hard to communicate that to a younger cohort of people that just don't understand. They just don't get, they're like, well, I mean, listen, why can I not play video games on Wednesday? But like, well, because Wednesday is when we do ropes and Wednesday is when we have to, you got to run the one man 5 times off this tower. Where'd you go on that second deployment?
That was another issue. We went to Djibouti.
Oh, okay. Beautiful
we're
DJ.
We're on a fixed wing team.
Yeah.
120 degrees, 100% humidity. Everybody's morale is low.
Right.
So, yeah.
Even so I distinctly remember training up from Vegas, getting ready to go to DJ. And during the time that we were training up in Vegas, it had something ridiculous, like 14 days in a row in 110 plus. So it wasn't even just triple digits, but it was like 112, more than 112 every single time. And we're training, we're getting ready to go. We all made the joke about, okay, well, hey, at least we're getting ready for Africa. At least this is going to be great. And somebody that had been there before was like, oh no, dude, this is hot, but it's not like Africa hot. And I clowned him. I laughed at him. I was like, what are you talking about? It's 115 degrees. 115 degrees is 115 degrees. I was completely wrong. I apologized to him when we were in Djibouti. Like, you know, we were still on the compound at that point. So we were not where the teams reside now, but the chow hall was like a 200-meter walk away out this one gate that we had to walk out, and you would sweat through your shirt walking from the section to the chow hall. Like, you would get to the chow hall and they had air conditioning. It was pretty good in the chow hall there. And it was, you'd be cold because your shirt was full of sweat. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And it like 10 o'clock in the morning, 110 degrees, 100% humidity, just brutal. But there's a lot of training to be had, and that's what supported that high ops tempo. And it's another thing is like CSAR. We all know what CSAR stands for. Come, sit, and relax. If nothing is happening, then you're not going. And you know, like we hit earlier, that's a good thing. You know, it's a good thing if nothing's happening. If you get called, that's the worst day in somebody else's life, unless it's an ISR asset. If it's an ISR asset, the person flying it in a container somewhere on the States is not really that worried about it. But all things said and done, how did you keep the young 3 levels sharp? Because they're asking for days off. They don't, you know, maybe understand the mission. How did you communicate your experience to those young 3 levels to keep them motivated?
Honestly, you just pull them aside and talk to them. I'm really big on interpersonal relationships, right? So I'd pull them aside one-on-one and just chat with them. Be like, hey man, where's your mind at? What are you focused on? How are you doing on these skills? Like, okay, well, this is why I'm focusing on this right now. You give me 5 hours a day, man, you can have your afternoon off. That's fine. But show me that you're competent, right? And that really kind of geared them back into where they needed to be. That's
awesome. And that's great input. And sometimes just hearing that, you know, there are a million, and I say a million because I'm a terrible PJ, and that's why I've been talked to a one-on-one like that so many times. But there's a million conversations in my head where somebody, no kidding, just sat me down and pulled me aside and was like, hey, how do you think you did on that last FMP? I don't know. I thought I did pretty good. And you're like, no, you sucked. And here's the 10 reasons why you sucked. And here's why we're focusing on those things. And you need that feedback. You need to be able to give that feedback as well as receive it and then action it and move forward. So, you know, good on you for fostering those relationships, because in the end, that's what matters. It's the team.
Yeah. What you just said there is important too, being able to receive the feedback. Another thing we would do quite often was a 360. We'd sit down, everybody would say their piece, and everybody would try and action on the things that they needed to improve. So, yeah.
And it's tough. It's a muscle. You have to exercise it. It is tough. And I've been, you know, 360 is awesome because that means it's supposed to go around in a circle, right? But sometimes you're in the middle of that circle and everybody in the 360 is like, hey, you really sucked on this one. And that hurts. That hurts the ego. That hurts your sense of self. That hurts your id. That hurts everything that you think you're established. You think that you're a PJ, that you're a special operator, and you're good at stuff. Some days you have bad days and you'll hear it from the team, and that hurts a lot. Like, it takes a lot to get to a place where you can say, they're saying it because they love me. They're saying it because they want this team to do better. They're saying it because we want to be a high performing team. I just got to take this one on the chin, try to be better, and move on. So unless you're put in those positions, and unless you have a coach, a guide, a mentor that can do it in a nuanced way, people get resistant to it. And those things can be bloody, both figuratively and literally at sometimes. So you get out of that second deployment out of DJ, and you're ready for your next career step. So where did you go from DJ?
So we actually had one more deployment out of DJ.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. following year, we went back to GJ. We had some teams go down south. I was happy to be on that team, right? Went down south. Had
Was that to Amanda or
no
Sam?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
In Somalia. We had some great opportunities there on the Rotary Wing team, right? We're actually doing what we signed up to do, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
Had an amazing opportunity to go back up north and plan essentially the mission of a lifetime with some other countries to go get a hostage that was taken the previous year. So that was pretty amazing. And really the best thing I think about this deployment was going down to Kenya. We got to teach partner force nations how to conduct personal recovery. We had 5 separate countries there, upwards of about 200 people, and just seeing the light bulbs click in these people who've never actually thought about doing personal recovery was pretty amazing.
Yep. My last deployment was to the same area, doing the same mission, a little bit different flavor, obviously, because we're the ST teams. But I'll tell you, just some feedback for you, man. Those guys took that to heart, and they actually used those skills. So the Kenya-Somalia border is a huge hotbed, right? Because there's constantly people flowing over the border there, and they do border operations. Their national security strategy is a little bit different in Kenya. So they essentially just go to the Bonai Forest, and they try to prevent these Mal state actors from coming over and getting in Kenya. And I'll tell you from the ground and from intimate knowledge of it, like there's been a bunch of people that have been saved, and I don't know what the number would be, but there's a bunch of people that have lived thanks to that instruction and thanks to the groundwork that you laid. And that's a great part about pararescue that people often don't understand is our interaction with partner force nations. Like we really are trying to teach them those skills to partner force nations in order to get them to solve their own problems. And there's other objectives to it, of course, because the military has lots of objectives to everything. But just giving them those life-saving skills is commendable. So, man, good on you. And those impacts are felt throughout that entire spot. So, man, good job, bud. So third deployment there, and now we're getting back stateside. So you have to be getting hot for orders. Where are we looking at going next?
Yeah, at this point, my wife was pregnant with our second child. So I decided to volunteer to be an instructor, be home more for the kids, the family. And it was a great move. Yeah.
Did you know where you wanted to go? Did you want just any instructor gig, or did you want to go to a certain spot?
I really tried for Texas, actually. Didn't get it, ended up coming to Kirtland, and honestly, it's way better.
Well, yeah, it is way better. And I'm glad, during that time, I was an instructor at the schoolhouse. So you and I shared the same spaces for a little bit. You were getting in and I was transferring out. So it wasn't as much as I would have liked, but I always tried to recruit talent down to Kirtland. And it was this constant, tug of war, this constant tension sort of between San Antonio and Kirtland, because people initially, they're like, I want to go to San Antonio. I want to see these people directly off the street. I want to be able to start planting that mind virus in these young people down there. I got to be honest with you, assessment selection and at the time, what we called INDOC, it's a wood chipper. Like it's awesome. I heard, one of the guys an instructor there that loved being an instructor there. He's like, man, I'm able to open up these people's chests and take a lighter and just start a fire inside of their chest. And I'm able to plant that seed. And I'm like, well, yeah, but also those students are just trying to make it to lunch. And you're giving them a pump up speech in like week 2 of INDOC, and they're terrified about an afternoon pool session. Like, I'm sure that you can make an impact there, but I would always use that story to say, but what about Kirtland? Because not only do you still get to do PJ stuff, but you get to teach them about tactics, about air operations, about advanced employment, about how it is we really go about mountaineering and, technical rescue and all these other things. And oh, by the way, you get to send them out to your friends that are team leaders on the other team. I think there was a lot of value in Kirtland. That was one of the things that I was not tracking. Like, I was not involved at Kirtland. They were like, hey, you're going to go be an instructor. And I was like, okay, tight, here we go. By the time I left there, I had no idea that I would get the job satisfaction, the motivation. It really did recharge my batteries coming out of there, because you're able to influence students down in Kirtland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get to Kirtland, babies, deployments behind you, and you have a new group of students. When you got to Kirtland, how did you, once you oriented stuff, because, this is a dumb admin thing, but it really takes you about 6 to 8 months to actually become a full-fledged instructor. You have to go through basic instructor courses, and you have to go through additional follow-on stuff, and then you have to teach and be evaluated. So it actually takes a little bit before you get out on the trail and start actually instructing. What was your impression of the students that were going through the schoolhouse? And what I'm asking is, there's a time when you get back and you look at the students, and we all do it. We're like, what are these people doing? Well, I wasn't this bad when I was a student. Like, newsflash, yes, you were. You 100% were. 100%. But when you got down there, what was your first impression of the students?
So my first impression, my team, it was a 13-man team. So I actually had a lot of, good connections with a small team, and it was phenomenal. So first impression was solid, man. These dudes were squared away. They had a lot of one-on-one instruction because they were so small.
Right. You had a lot of time to devote to those cats.
Yeah, man. But as we progressed, we started getting larger and larger teams. I think one of the teams had like 8 crows and I want to say upwards of like 35 PJ students. And it was brutal, man, because they don't get that direct one-on-one instruction. The instructors at Kirtland, they were critically manned at the time. Every single instructor was in charge of their own block. And then they had to pull help from every other block just to get their phase up and running. So it was brutal. Yeah,
it's tough. And we've talked about it all the time, but I just want to highlight, this is how much effort that you put in. You're there 2 hours before the students. You don't leave until 2 hours after the students. You're expected to maintain your own skills, qualifications, certifications. You're expected to maintain your own high level of physical fitness. And, oh, by the way, you have this intensive job. I always talk about the air ops instructors. Those dudes are out there ripping 8 free fall jumps a day. Like, they're turning, 6 to 8 jumps and jumping static line and jump master and all these other things. None of that stops. Because the students are going through and by the way, there's always 2 courses running at any given time. It's not just one course. There's a senior team and a junior team, and it's always running concurrently. So there is no break. There's no quarter. It is not, you don't get to go there and take a knee. The ops tempo alone is just immense. But you said it a bunch of times, and I want to kind of highlight this is you value interpersonal relationships. You value helping that one-on-one student. You value pulling people aside, and you value giving your experience to a younger generation to kind of help out. So as you're at Kirtland, and I'm sure I won't speak for you, but I'll tell my story because I love making things about me, is I would get frustrated. It definitely got to a point where I was like, man, I feel like I'm repeating myself all the time. I feel like these folks aren't listening. I was able to work through that on my own. How did you stay away from instructor burnout? How did you stay away from getting that frustrating, super salty affect that we all take on?
I actually had a really hard time staying away from it, mainly because of the administrative stuff that we had to do on the back end, right? Like you mentioned, 2 hours before, 2 hours after, you're there, you're planning the course, you're writing up paperwork for, these knuckleheads who did something that they probably shouldn't have done. And that is where the burnout set in. When I was out on the line and instructing, I was having a great time. But the 2 hours before and after is what burnt me out.
Right. And it's one of those, it's a war of attrition. And that's the best way to do it, is you're just holding on with white knuckles and trying to find as many things that fill your cup when, it's like you're pouring from this big picture, right? But all these other things are poking holes in your cup, and you're slowly leaking out. So I think at this time you start making that transition to where you see a problem, right? You see some cracks in the foundation, and you start to think, hey, wait a second, there's something that's lacking maybe in these students, and I can't put my finger on it, but you started thinking about what it is that you wanted to do to help. So Kirtland was your last assignment as a PJ, was it not?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you get out, you make your transition, and then you start thinking, how can I help? And in comes Guardian Fitness. So, tell us about kind of the origins of Guardian Fitness, and, most importantly, what is it? What brought it on? What was there an idea? Was there a feeling? What made you think about starting Guardian Fitness?
Yeah. So, throughout being an instructor, like you said, I started seeing some cracks in the foundation. And when I pull people aside and just really talk to them about what their experience was down in Texas or what their experience is up here, one of the big things that it boiled down to is a lack of direct one-on-one mentorship. Right? And they really valued these one-on-one talks, and they would thank me at graduation for these one-on-one talks. So it's like, man, like, what if I could just talk to these dudes before they join the military, right? And as I transitioned out of the military, I started struggling with a lost purpose again. Felt like I quit, you know? I just lived 10 years under the motto that others may live, and now I'm not, right? So through the 3 months of getting out, I went through a really amazing program that helped me find my own sense of purpose again. Like, if I had this day one when I joined, all of the issues that I had would have been fine. Everything, right? And I might have made it to 20 years in this career. So really, that's what Guardian Fitness does. We help these dudes day one, before they even start, try to find their own sense of purpose that they can latch onto and hopefully make it through a 20-year career. Yeah.
We had Chief Cox, who's still the group chief down at Aspect War Training Wing, and he's a longtime personal friend of mine. Like, I can't say enough about that dude. He's a coach, he's a mentor, he's somebody that I look up to, he's somebody that I emulate. When we had him on, he talked about mental armor. We talk about resiliency, and we talk about all of these other things. And I think you were the one. I stole this quote from you, but I believe you said that INDOC was the best resiliency course you'd ever been through. And that is a great way to put it. But we always talk about it after the fact. If you get shot, it's too late to put body armor on. You got to put your armor on before you go get into the fight. And the fact that you saw an opportunity to start helping people prior to, man, that's amazing. Going, checking you out here on guardianfitness.us, the mission straight up front says, you're there with Guardian coaching, to bridge the gap between current and future special warfare operators. That is so important. If it's, the number of people, the number of PJs that know what it's like to get into a firefight, that know what it's like to go into combat, that know what it's like to fly into a hot LZ that's laden with IEDs to try to get just one person out, to risk your whole team to go do that. That gap is getting wider and wider and wider. And unless people like you engage with these younger folks and get them ready from the very beginning, I distinctly think, I think that we have the distinct possibility of failure, and we have a no fail mission. We all say it all the time. So as you started off Guardian Fitness, and again, go check it out at guardianfitness.us, and we'll throw it in the notes and stuff down there so people can kind of orient to what it is. Your very first values, people over hardware. Did you make the entire project just so that you could talk like individually to people? It feels like that answer is a solid softball yes, because of your love of interpersonal communication. But what was the going in idea of Guardian Fitness?
It was exactly that. It was just to mentor people, one-on-one direct mentorship via like hour-long meetings on Zoom, where I can talk about the lessons I've learned and how you can apply it in your daily life.
Man, that is absolutely fantastic. And, as you started, there's challenges with everything. 90% of entrepreneurs fail, on their first attempt. And I'm sure you had like those things that you had to overcome. What's been your biggest challenge so far with getting Guardian Fitness up and off the ground?
Advertisement.
Yeah, just getting the word out there, right?
Yeah, well, getting the word out there.
We can help. I'm excited to help you on that one because we're very, I'd say we're mildly popular in a niche community. So getting the word out there is definitely something we can do. And that's one of the reasons that, I wanted to have you on and have this talk. What are some things that you're looking forward to in the future? Are you working with other organizations? Are you, there's a million things. So if you wanted to tell people about the goodness that Guardian Fitness is doing and then where you want to go, what would you tell them?
And like talking about these other organizations, other people that I'm bringing on board, right? I'm actually currently training 2 mentors right now to start taking that home and just telling their story and start mentoring these people. But in addition to that, right, I'm working with a nutritionist. She just came out with her own nutrition course. I'm blasting that on, Guardian Fitness's Instagram. And for any Guardian Fitness customer that comes through, you guys get a pretty solid discount code to go through her program, and you can learn how to build your own nutrition course or build your own nutrition platform brand, which is honestly, it's something that we don't do. We go to the nutritionist and we're like, hey, I need a plan. And they give you this document based off of your body fat percentage. And you're like, well, how did you come to this? They don't take the time to teach you that. And this course does. I'm working with strength and conditioning coaches just to build up these programs that you guys can get at, again, a discounted price through Guardian Fitness. I have a psych doc on board who I'm working on getting monthly seminars for these dudes just to talk about, hey, you may have to kill somebody. Hey, you may have to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm really trying to build this wholesome product for people looking into getting into any special warfare platform, whether it's, pararescue, combat control, SR, or Army, Marine, Navy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Yeah. And those things aren't like, they're not exactly the same, right? Like I'm not I would never say that I'd be a good, Green Beret because I have no idea what that's like. But I'll tell you what, I know a lot of Green Berets and we have a lot of the same values. We have a lot of the same wants and desires. And that's a lot of the same people that are working on different teams, if that makes any sense. I love your focus on community, man. I love the fact that you guys want to bring everybody together and get those people in the community as early as possible. Because when you're at assessment selection, like you're only as good as the guy to your left and your right. There have been very few graduates of one. Unfortunately, we just lost one of the only graduates of one just recently in the pararescue community. I love that you're focusing on community and starting to branch out. You were talking about before we got on, you dropped Steve Nisbet's name, and I just sat down and talked to him for a long time about his career and his work with Shields and Stripes. So I know that you guys are working on a collab and it's coming up here at the end of the month. What can you kind of talk about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, man. So Guardian Fitness is working on doing a yearly event, right? At the end of March every year, we're looking at raising money for an awesome nonprofit. So I looked into Shields and Stripes. Steven Nisbet was a PJ. He is co-founder of Shields and Stripes. I looked into their mission, everything that they're doing, their testimonials, and they just have an amazing program. So at the end of the month, Guardian Fitness is hosting the Extra Mile. And the whole purpose for the Extra Mile is to better yourself so that you can better other people, right? So at the end of your workout, run a mile, swim a mile, fin a mile, do whatever you can, do an extra lift, whatever it is, to signify that you are bettering yourself or somebody else. At the end of the week, the goal is to dedicate that mile to somebody else, right? To Shields and Stripes, more specifically. And for every extra mile you went throughout this week, donate $5. 7 days, that's $35 per person. Guardian Fitness alone has 2,000 followers. If every single person did that, we would raise $75,000 for them.
Man, that's amazing. That is so good. And if you guys aren't tracking Shields and Stripes, go check them out at shieldsandstripes.org. Straight up from their why. They believe that first responders and veterans are the true American heroes. And when they receive a mental injury, they should be provided top tier rehabilitation programs to get them back on track. Basically, they're running 2 programs a year. They're bringing in up to 8 people per course that they're running. It's over, I believe, a week. And they are giving them intensive help, not just physical, but mental health help, helping them to deal with stressors from the job. And this is first responders and military. So, man, their organization is righteous. I love Steve. He's a longtime friend. He and I went to the train up for our first deployment together. So, we share that, all those stories that come with it. And I'm so glad that you've partnered up with them and that you guys are focused together to getting it. It's the last week of March. Is that the 24th through the 31st? Is that what you guys are doing?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Man, Tyler, I can't say thank you enough for coming on. We really appreciate it. Go follow Tyler over at Guardian Fitness on Instagram. Check him out at guardianfitness.us. You can find everything you need to on there, from how to get a hold of Tyler, how to get entered into the coaching and mentorship program, and the psych doc, the nutritionist, the strength and conditioning aspect. Man, it sounds like it's just full spectrum support from start to finish to get those people, get them that armor that they need early so that they can get to a 20-year career. Is there anything else that people need to know about Guardian Fitness or how to reach you?
No, you hit it, man.
Crushed it. Yeah, got it. Well, Tyler, we always end with advice, and we're always talking to those folks that are thinking about doing something impossible. 90% of the people that try to do this are going to fail. When people are like, "Oh, should I do this?" We are very blunt with them. We tell them statistically, you're going to fail. Statistically, you're not going to make this thing. And they're always looking for that one piece of advice to kind of at least get them started. If you had that 1 second to pull somebody aside, say, "Hey, young person, here's what it is," what would you tell them?
physical fitness is great, right? It's a huge aspect of ANS, but the only way to get through a 20-year career is to focus on your mind. Be comfortable with your own thoughts, right, from start to finish. That's it.
Damn, crushed it. Clear, concise, to the point. Tyler, man, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on. It's a righteous organization that you got over there at Guardian Fitness. Everybody go follow them on IG. Guardian Fitness is the screen name, is the handle, and then guardianfitness.us. So guardianfitness.us over on the web, and that's how you can get to Tyler and all of his projects. So Tyler, can't say thank you enough. Everybody else, check out ONESREADY.com for everything else that you need for getting a touch point for all of these awesome organizations and brothers that are doing awesome things. Leave us a like, a review, a comment down below. Thanks for following along with everything that we're doing. We appreciate you. As always, we'll see you next time. Train hard. Thanks.